Tonight on Steelers Talk, the Pittsburgh Steelers have finally agreed to terms with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who is in Pittsburgh, to sign a contract to join the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad. I'm going to be breaking down that move here at the top of today's show. Then I'll get into my Week 9 film takeaways. I know you guys love these takeaways. Watch the film today. I've got my offensive and defensive takeaways, some things about what the Steelers did better on defense, some of the things that the Steelers need to do better on offense today. So make sure you guys stick around for those takeaways later in today's show. But tomorrow, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, we will be going live on this channel for our trade deadline special here on Steelers Talk. There are a ton of rumors surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers looking for a wide receiver before the deadline. Tomorrow, we will see if they do that tomorrow afternoon. So again, join us 1 p.m. Eastern time, and make sure you guys click that subscribe button, because if there's breaking news tonight, if they trade for a receiver tonight or tomorrow morning, we will be going live as soon as that news goes down. All right, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss any of our coverage during the NFL trade deadline. So we have a new Steeler, and it is officially official now. The Pittsburgh Steelers will be signing Marquez Valdes-Scantling to the practice squad, and he will join forces with Aaron Rodgers, his former quarterback there with the Green Bay Packers. And Rodgers said he was one of his favorite teammates of all time last week. Now, Pittsburgh, in a corresponding move, released a fan favorite cornerback, Beanie Bishop Jr. He was a Week 1 starter for this team last year after being a UDFA out of West Virginia. This year, he's been on the practice squad all season, and with the Steelers really embracing a big nickel type of defense this year, Beanie Bishop Jr., I guess, just didn't, fit in anymore with this football team and what they wanted to run defensively. So he ends up getting the boot. I'm sure, though, 4 interceptions last year. Somebody is going to pick him up somewhere. So best of luck to Beanie in his future endeavors here in the National Football League. But now, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS, now rejoins Aaron Rodgers here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, this is certainly a pairing that was pretty prolific with the Green Bay Packers. Obviously Davante Adams was the guy getting a majority of the targets, a majority of the yards, all that stuff. But MVS was the legitimate deep threat in that Packer offense for years. And by the way, guys, MVS still has his speed when you watch him on film. You guys can take a look at his numbers throughout his time in Green Bay with Rodgers, including Rodgers' last 2 MVP seasons. Rodgers has said how much he loves MVS as a person and as a teammate, and he still thinks that he can really play. The last time that they played together in 11 games, 430 yards, over 16 yards per catch. Back during the 2020 MVP season, he had almost 700 yards and over 20 yards a catch. So he's a true, legitimate deep threat that the Pittsburgh Steelers are adding to their roster right here. And my expectation is that he will be on the active roster sometime soon. My guess is they'll probably release Scotty Miller at some point, and they will bring up Marquez Valdes-Scantling to be that kind of other deep threat inside the Steelers wide receiver room this year. In terms of Rodgers' feelings on MVS, this is what he had to say on his former Packer teammate and now current Steelers teammate last week. I love MVS. I've always enjoyed playing with him. He's one of my favorite teammates of all time. He is a really special guy, and I think MVS can still really play. You saw last year when he was in New Orleans, he had opportunities. He had a lot of big touchdowns. He can still run. I think MVS wants to be on an active roster, so if there wasn't an opportunity here for that, then I guess he's waiting for something else, but I don't fault him. I love MVS, whether he is here or somewhere else. I'm always pulling for him. So if MVS is looking for an active roster spot, I'm guessing that means that the Pittsburgh Steelers are telling him that eventually he's going to be elevated to the active roster at some point. And, when Rodgers says that MVS played pretty well for the Saints last year, he's not joking. He had over 380 yards receiving last year in just 8 games played with the Saints, 17 receptions, which means a 22.2 yards per catch average. That is monstrous. And then 4 touchdowns. That is a touchdown every other game. And if you prorate those numbers over a full 17-game schedule, this is what Marquez Valdes-Scantling would have done with the New Orleans Saints last year. 36 catches, over 800 yards receiving. That would be a career record for him, I believe. And then over, again, 20 yards per catch. So he's a legitimate deep threat. He would have had 9 touchdowns. And if the Steelers can get anywhere close to the production out of MVS that the Saints did last year, I think many Steelers fans will be perfectly okay with that. But the big question when it comes to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, guys, is this the move that Omar Khan is making at the wide receiver position before the NFL trade deadline? Or is this just a move where they're going out and getting a deep threat but they're going to be adding somebody else, maybe a Jacoby Myers or a Deebo Samuel or a Calvin Ridley before the NFL draft or the NFL trade deadline tomorrow. We actually put out a video out earlier today, guys, breaking down the latest trade deadline intel. We talk about the possibility of Deebo Samuel. We talk about the idea of Jacoby Myers, Calvin Ridley, and so much more. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put the chip to that in the top right of today's show, as well as the link in the comments and description of today's show. But predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers make another move at wide receiver before the trade deadline tomorrow afternoon? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw an ad break here in just a few seconds, and I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about Prize Picks here, let me know yes or no down there in the comment section. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And the hard-hitting football action is even better this season with Prize Picks. The weather might be changing outside, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the bigger payouts and you really know ball, go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test, join millions of users, and sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app. So for tonight's Monday Night Football action, I'm taking the more on passing yards for Dak Prescott, the less on receiving yards for George Pickens, and the more on touchdowns for Trey McBride. So download the Prize Picks app today if you haven't already, and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, so let's dive into these Week 9 film takeaways. I had the opportunity to watch the film here today, and I've got my takeaways for you guys. And everyone wants to know about the defense. So we'll start with the defense. What did this defense do to turn around, their performance from, the last 2 weeks versus the Cincinnati Bengals and the Green Bay Packers, respectively, where, frankly, this defense didn't look good at all? What was the difference? Well, Mike Tomlin will tell you it wasn't that much. This is what Mike had to say after the game. He said, "It's a fine line between making wine and squashing grapes in this business. It's nothing dramatic. It really isn't, and that's why we respect it so much. Couple plays here and there, and it might have been different last week. That's football at this level." So Mike Tomlin will try to tell you that it wasn't really anything drastic or different or anything like that. It was just a matter of execution. But the thing is, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense did make some big changes this week, not only in the way they deployed the personnel, but how they deployed that personnel from a schematic standpoint. So let's take a look here at my defensive takeaways. Number one is that there wasn't really any need for tricks. I think that Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin kind of figured out that you don't have to do crazy post-snap rotations and put people out of position to make plays in order for this defense to have success. In fact, your defense is very talented, and it can make plays even when you're not doing these crazy post-snap rotations that we've seen throughout the season with Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin that have frankly put this defense in a tough position. And Pittsburgh used post-snap rotation much, much less this week compared to the other weeks that we have seen this defense play. And, the result was the result. I think they had less than 10 defensive snaps before garbage time yesterday where the defense had a post-snap rotation. That was by far the least so far this season. And really what they did instead was they played more split field coverage, which allowed them to play a little bit more quote-unquote statically, but also to kind of mask what they were doing to the opposing offense and Daniel Jones. A big benefit of playing with split safeties is that it keeps what you're running to the offense kind of ambiguous. You could be running cover 4, you could be running cover 6, or you could be running, you could be rotating a guy down and playing cover 1. You could be doing a lot of different things from a too-high shell, which is why so many NFL defenses play with too high shells pretty much as a base defense nowadays, is because it's really tough to determine as a quarterback what they're in pre-snap, but you don't really have to do too much like crazy post-snap rotations either. You can kind of live in kind of this ambiguous state, living in these too high safety shells, and that's what we saw from the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. And they played a lot of quarters yesterday. That was something that it was a big difference compared to a lot of their other games this season, is that they played a lot of man-match coverage. They played quarters, they played palms. They did a lot of different things there where they would have these coverage rules, and then I think everybody in the secondary, including Jalen Ramsey, Kyle Duggar, the new guy, even Darius Slay, these guys did a good job sticking to their guys, finding their right player. And, frankly, this defense, I think, is built to play this type of defense. I mean, Darius Slay won a Super Bowl just last year playing in a quarters and cover 6 heavy defense with Vic Fangio back in Philly. So this is a defense, and this is a style of defense that, even though Darius Slay might be the weakest link in this Steelers cornerback room right now, he was still able to play a decent brand of football yesterday versus the Colts because this is the style of defense that he feels most comfortable in and frankly fits his physical skill set the best at age 34. So I think that was a really smart move by Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin to shift to more man match and to shift to more quarters and split field coverages. Also, they blitzed less than they did in any game they had this season, and look at the results. You got better and more results, especially in the pass rush, which is very important here, guys, where the pass rush was getting home, they were getting sacks, they were causing turnovers, they were forcing Daniel Jones into making mistakes, and yet Pittsburgh's blitz rate was as low as it's been the entire season. What have we been telling you here on this show, man? Blitz less. You have enough talent up front to win with 4. Your weakness is in the secondary and in pass coverage. Therefore, you should be putting more body resources into coverage. Force these quarterbacks to hold the ball for just that half second longer, and you're going to get sacks. You're going to get pressures. You're going to force quarterbacks into bad decisions, and that is exactly what we saw from this Pittsburgh Steelers defense yesterday afternoon versus the Indianapolis Colts. And frankly, guys, Pittsburgh's 4-man rush, when you've got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig's rotating in, you got Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Derek Harmon's rotating in. Like, there's so much talent on this Steelers defensive line. I think Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin kind of figured out, hey, man, we got a lot of talent on this group. We're paying this group a lot of money. We're paying these guys to have an advantage, and that advantage is we can win with 4. And I can't tell you how much an advantage that is, guys, putting extra people out in coverage but still getting pressure, and quick pressure at that, is a huge advantage that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense has now, and it could be game-changing for their season on the defensive side of the ball. And then a big solution in terms of cutting out the really easy flats and slants and, the very easy throws that Daniel Jones loves to have and Jordan Love and Joe Flacco killed this defense with. They did something called one double slot, which is a cover 1 look, okay? But what they do is they take 2 people, they take the slot corner, and then they take a linebacker, and they double the slot receiver. You guys can see Patrick Queen and Brandon Echols at the top of the screen there, double teaming. It's Josh Downs is their slot wide receiver. One player has outside leverage, the other person has inside leverage. So if Downs goes out into the flat, Echols has leverage on him. But if he goes inside on like a slant or on a shallow cross, Patrick Queen has leverage on him in that scenario. So they were not going to allow these slot receivers to get these easy yards that we've seen the Packers and the Bengals get on them. And the Steelers played this coverage multiple times. And essentially what it is, it's just cover 1, but they're sending an extra person out in coverage, something that we have been preaching on this channel for weeks, and they're taking away those short routes to the slot receiver, forcing Daniel Jones to throw the ball down the field, which forces him to hold the ball longer, which gives the pass rush time to get home. So I thought that was a really great solution brought on by Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin this week. But also, man, it really does start with the run defense. Whenever you play the Indianapolis Colts, if you can shut down Jonathan Taylor, you can shut down their offense. Okay, I think that was illustrated yesterday where Daniel Jones had to throw the ball 50 times in that ball game, and the Steelers really did. They didn't just contain Jonathan Taylor, they shut him down. Just 45 yards on 14 carries. That is not a 6.0 average, by the way. That's like 3.2 or something like that. F. Ponzi in the chat for the poor math there. But no touchdowns on the day. And he pretty much did nothing the entire game, okay? And I'm just looking at this situation right now, and, they did a really good job, keeping him contained and not letting him get outside. And, there wasn't gaping holes in the middle of the run defense. And this is even more impressive because the Steelers were doing that, and they shut down the Offensive Player of the Year favorite out of those 2 high safety structures that we were talking about. And I think a big part of that is Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar are so good as run defenders that, you kind of put them, in that kind of quarters look where they're not truly deep. They're kind of closer to the line of scrimmage, and you use them in the run fit. bit, and they were so good filling up those holes, and there just wasn't anywhere to go for Jonathan Taylor the entire day, which set up the Pittsburgh Steelers pass defense to ball out just like they did. Now let's talk about some individual performances. That Keanu Benton really played well in this one. This game plus the Vikings game, definitely his best games, maybe of his career. He has been phenomenal here, and he really balled out. And it wasn't just against the pass guys. Like, he's taken a lot of flack for his run defense. He was doing a really good job against Jonathan Taylor in this game as well. Also on the defensive line, I thought the outside linebacker rotation was a lot better this week, okay? And we've been really critical of Mike Tomlin and Tara Lawson for not playing Nick Herbig enough over the last several weeks. Well, this week, they listened to us, and they gave him more snaps, and they reduced the snaps of T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, okay? And, certainly, I think T.J. Watt had just over 60. I think that Alex Highsmith had about 48, and then Nick Herbig had about 40. And then Jack Sawyer got into the mix as well with about 20 snaps in this ball game. It's absolutely fantastic what they did here in this game, because I think what I love about this the most, guys, all right, is yes, you are paying T.J. Watt a lot of money, and you're paying him to be out there on the field. And same thing goes for Alex Highsmith. And Nick Herbig is on a rookie deal. He's not making nearly as much money. But really the value in putting Nick Herbig on the field, and by the way, Highsmith had to leave the game for a period of time, so that contributed a little bit. But, evening out these snaps among these four outside linebackers allows T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith to stay fresh throughout the course of the football game. And you guys saw what a fresh T.J. Watt looked like, man. He was making a big impact on the ball game. Alex Highsmith had one of the best games of his career on kind of like a bum ankle, frankly. He got injured early in the game. He got his ankle taped, and he still had the impact on the game that he had. So keeping these guys fresh, it's absolutely paramount, not only over the course of a game, but over the course of a season. And, of course, Nick Herbig, when he's out on the field, he can be super disruptive as well. And Jack Sawyer certainly played pretty well as well. So really the strength of this defense is its depth on the defensive line. I think Mike Tomlin and Tara Lawson are waking up to the fact that they got to use that depth, and they got to keep guys fresh to really accentuate this group moving forward, and I think they did a great job of that this week. But then we get to the second level, and I thought Peyton Wilson was an absolute revelation. Run defense, man coverage, just shutting down running backs. He had a couple reps versus Tyler Warren that were impressive. Maybe his zone feel isn't the best in the world, but his interception, guys, he was in man coverage versus a different defender or different receiver who was chip blocking, and he gets his eyes back to the quarterback in man coverage to read the eyes of Daniel Jones, and then picks that ball off, and that was really a turning point in the game as well. That was the Steelers defense's second turnover in a row, and then also he kind of comes in on that linebacker blitz, knocks the ball, on that kind of quick pass that Daniel Jones tried to get out to the flat, and then Jack Sawyer's right there to make that interception. Peyton Wilson was absolutely fantastic yesterday, and if he can just develop a little bit more feel in his zone coverage, he's got the physical capabilities to be one of the best off-ball linebackers in football, and he's getting better every single week. Now we'll talk here about the safeties, because everyone wants to talk about the safeties. I thought Jalen Ramsey was an absolute enforcer, and you really have to think about keeping him at safety for the rest of the season, okay? I know you got Jabril Peppers, who's going to be coming back eventually, but watching this film, man, he makes people pay for going over the middle of the field. Remember that great play on 3rd and 2 early in the game where they tried dumping it off to Tyler Warren, and then Ramsey just buries him before he can get to the line to gain? That was just fantastic stuff. I thought Ramsey was fantastic in terms of his communication. He was really good in terms of the risks that he was taking, trying to cut certain crossers and stuff like that. He's just a really smart, instinctual football player, and he just reminds me a lot of Charles Woodson in that regard, where he's the corner for the longest of times, all-pro caliber corner, but now I think he's getting to the point in his career where he can be an all-pro caliber safety. He's a hard hitter. He's one of the leaders of this defense. Apparently he spoke to the entire team the night before the game, saying that this team has the potential to win a Super Bowl, and we got to come together and all that different stuff, man. And, he's been a fantastic addition, in my opinion, to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and I'm glad he's wearing black and gold. And speaking of guys I'm really happy is here, I'm talking about Kyle Duggar here. I think he's a keeper. All right, he was really solid in coverage. Was he like the big splash player in this game? No, but you're not getting Kyle Duggar to be that. You only gave away like a late-round pick swap to get him in your building. What you wanted and what you needed, frankly, out of the safety position, because you weren't getting this with Juan Thornhill or Chuck Clark, is competency. All right, just go out there, cover your guy. He did a really good job on Tyler Warren a number of times in man-to-man, one-on-one coverage, which is really difficult to do. Warren's had a hell of a season. And Kyle Duggar, was taking on the quarters looks extremely well. He was in the right spot very consistently. He was just very consistently in the right place. He knew what to do. And for somebody that wasn't even with the team for a week at that point, that is incredibly, incredibly impressive. I'm guessing it's only going to get better the more he's with the team, the more that he builds chemistry with these guys. I think this has been a fantastic addition to this point, and I can't wait to see more from Kyle Duggar. Now, before we jump into the offensive side of the ball here, my Week 9 takeaways from this football game on offense, click that thumbs up icon if you think Pittsburgh's defense is back for good. Give me a thumbs up if you agree with me on that, because if the Steelers can keep this up on defense, man, they're going to be one hell of a defense down the stretch. Now, let's get to the offense, because this was the side of the ball that struggled a little bit more in this game. And something that I appreciated about the leader of this group, Aaron Rodgers, is that he wasn't going to pretend that this was a great day on offense just because the Steelers won this game in pretty convincing fashion. He kind of understood that this should have been an even bigger blowout than it was, and I really appreciate the response that he had in his post-game press conference. This is what he had to say. It was pretty ugly on offense for a decent part of the day. Had a lot of chances, but our defense played incredible. I loved the play calling. I thought the execution was pretty bad. We got to look in the mirror and play better on offense, because that's not good enough. Game like that, we got to put up 35, 42 on the board and close out the game. And I just really appreciate the answer there from Aaron Rodgers. And I think that kind of answer where, he's taking accountability, he's keeping focus on what he can improve upon instead of just resting on his laurels. Like, if we would have had this win last year with Russell Wilson, he'd be like, oh yeah, God is good, blah, 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 all this different stuff, all the positivity shit. But no, what we need is a guy like Aaron Rodgers to be like, hey, we dropped a lot of passes. We left a lot of points on the board. We got to focus up, and we got to get things right heading into the Los Angeles Chargers week, because, the schedule is going to be getting, tougher. You got the Chargers next week. You got the Bills coming up. You got 2 Ravens games that are going to be huge down the stretch. You got the Lions on the road. This offense needs to play better, and they need to, combine that with good defensive play. And if this Steelers team can put it all together here, man, they can beat any team in this league on any given Sunday. Now let's get to my offensive takeaways here, starting with Rodgers himself. And I thought he played a really smart, good football game. He put the ball where it needed to go very consistently. But honestly, I think the supporting cast really let him down. And you got to tighten that stuff up, all right? Whether I'm talking about Jonnu Smith dropping a pass on the first play of the game, or it was beautifully designed by Arthur Smith, and the throw was good enough from Rodgers. You got to come down with that if you're Jonnu. Darnell Washington dropping a ball that goes literally right in the middle of his chest on a 4th and 3 that would have been a touchdown for Aaron Rodgers. All right, DK Metcalf making a couple, missing a couple balls that he should catch. Kenneth Gainwell, all right, on a 3rd and 11. Rodgers puts it right on him with great position to go get a first down. Said he cuts inside, and it's short of the sticks, and the Steelers have to punt. There's just a lot of little things in this game where I think that the supporting cast let Rodgers down. And if you just tighten up those screws just a little bit, man, that might have been the difference between 0 points and putting up 14 extra points in this ball game. And if you can put up those 14 extra points regularly, there's not going to be many teams in this league that can beat this football team. But then, DK in particular, man, we got to get more from you, man. $30+ million per season, you got to come down with these tough catches. And I know some of the situations there was contested catch situations, and he couldn't come down with them. But, you get paid to make those catches, plain and simply. There was one that hit him right in the hands. He took his eyes off the ball. It took the Steelers off schedule, and they ended up having to punt because of that drop, okay? Because you get into a 3rd and long situation, and, that's a very low percentage conversion rate. Then he had one in the end zone on a fade where he had an opportunity to snatch the ball over a defender, and he drops it. So, those are plays where DK Metcalf has to come down with the football. 2 receptions on 6 yards is a joke for a number 1 receiver in this league. He needs to do a better job of that. He understands that, and I'm sure he will be better moving forward. Also, it just wasn't Roman Wilson's day, unfortunately. After coming off the most receiving yards of his career, getting his first ever NFL touchdown, a really good week versus the Packers. I thought he ran good routes, snapping off on his routes, stopping on a dime, getting open. open. He just wasn't the guy in the progression at the point in time where he needed to be, unfortunately. It just wasn't his week, all right? Rodgers loves to distribute to different people, and, as Rodgers likes to say every week, some weeks it's going to be this guy, other weeks it's going to be this guy. We've seen Muth have big games. We've seen Roman have big games. We've seen Calvin have big games. DK Metcalf have big games. It's going to be different every single week, right? It just wasn't Roman's week. Now, obviously, when he did get the football late in the game, he ends up jumping when he really doesn't need to. And he ends up giving the Colts some life there by fumbling the football and giving the ball back to Indianapolis. Just a stupid football play, and honestly, it might lead to the Steelers trading for a receiver before the NFL trade deadline. We'll have to see what they decide on that. But overall, I'm still pretty enthused with what I'm seeing from Roman Wilson. I still think he can be a part of the solution at this position moving forward. Then we get to the tight end position here where, even though Darnell Washington made a big mistake early in the game, dropping a 4th and 3, perfectly placed by Rodgers, which probably would have ended up being a touchdown. Instead, you get 0 points because he couldn't identify the football there. Rodgers kept going back to him, and he ends up with 4 catches. He had a really great catch where Rodgers threw a ball behind him. He's running, and he has to kind of go back and make a crazy catch. For somebody that's like almost 300 pounds to make that catch is redonkulous. And he averaged over a first down per catch in this football game. So, good job on Darnell. They're getting him the football more. Rodgers really trusts him. You can really tell that. And, I'm glad to see that one bad play didn't prevent Rodgers from going back to him later in the ball game. Then we get to the offensive line. My thoughts on this group. I thought Troy Fautano was excellent. All right, he still hasn't given up a sack this entire season. I think, his quickness out of, his stance is so elite. I mean, these guys, these pass rushers just have no time to get around him because his feet are so quick. And then he had a couple really nice pancakes in the run game yesterday as well. Like, he is just a freaking beast. If he can stay healthy, and that knee is still a little bit of a concern, but if he can stay healthy, man, this guy is one of the better right tackles in the National Football League already, as far as I'm concerned. On the other side, at left tackle, I thought it was another solid outing for Broderick Jones. Now, something that I'll say is that it really helps having a really good right tackle in Fautano that you can trust in one-on-one pass protection, because that opens you up to give more help to Broderick Jones. And that's why we haven't seen Broderick get beat really badly over the last several weeks, is because the Steelers, I think, have done a really good job protecting Broderick's weaknesses and giving him a lot of help. And, we consistently see him get better and better and better, and that's what you want to see at this point. We want to see this offensive line thrive, and Broderick Jones as the left tackle is going to be a big part of that. We've seen that over the last several weeks, which is a really good sign. But then when Isaac Seumalo came out of the game and Spencer Anderson had to come in at left guard, I thought he struggled. He gave up some pressures. He's not nearly as good of a run blocker at left guard, in my opinion, as he is as a jumbo tight end. He's frankly elite as a jumbo tight end, but he's just not an elite player at left guard. And, this entire offense gets downgraded when Isaac Seumalo is not out there at left guard. So hopefully that is not going to be a serious injury. We'll get an update from Mike Tomlin on Tomlin Tuesday tomorrow. Hopefully that injury is nothing serious, and maybe he misses a game, maybe 2, but you really want Seumalo healthy for down the stretch and playoff time, so that you have your entire personnel on the offensive line ready to go to deploy those jumbo personnel packages that this Steelers offense is known for. So where are you guys at? Let me know down there in the comments section. Was the percent chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers win a playoff game this season? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance they win a playoff game this year. This team blows, to 100, meaning they are definitely winning a playoff game no matter what. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed today's show, guys. Of course, tomorrow is the NFL trade deadline. We'll be live at 1 p.m. Eastern time here on Steelers Talk for our trade deadline special. Last year, we were live when the Steelers traded for Mike Williams and Preston Smith. We'll see what moves the con artist has up his sleeve for tomorrow afternoon. So I'll see you guys then. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.